That summer, I had no face. My name is Leah, and I'm a 33-year-old female. After an incident at work, I've been ordered to go through a mandatory minimum of 8 sessions of therapy. As part of my recovery, I've been ordered to go through a mandatory minimum of 8 sessions of therapy. I've been advised to talk openly about a traumatic experience. However, as they didn't specify who to talk about it with, I figured I could share it with you guys. To this day, I'm not sure what to make of it. Now I want to be clear, they call this a delusion. I've gone through countless personality tests and trauma care, and they've given this many names, delusion being the most common. But I refuse to let myself be gaslit. This was real, and no one can tell me otherwise. I can admit my wrongdoings in every aspect of my life, but this. Back in the summer of 2001, I was 11 years old. I've been playing with my friend Imani over at her place all day, and we had forgotten the time. I was supposed to come straight home after having dinner at her place, but we got stuck watching The Emperor's New Groove. So when the movie was over, I realized I was in big trouble. Mom was always a bit overprotective, as her only daughter and proclaimed miracle baby. I had a lot of expectations riding on me. It was already dark outside, but the fastest way to get home was the path next to the frog lake. I wasn't allowed to go there because the street lights were broken, but they'd be mad either way, so whatever. If I had to go through the park at night for whatever reason, I was to go straight through no matter what. That was my plan, at least. I was about halfway through the park, panting like a racehorse. One of my braids had come loose and kept poking my nose, making me stop to sneeze every 200 feet or so. I tried my best to keep running all the way through, but it got so dark I almost walked off the road. I had to slow down to catch my breath and navigate. You did not want to get lost near Frog Lake, or you'd drown. That or the frogmen would drag you into the lake and force you to drink tadpoles. That's what the adults kept telling us, at least. I stopped at a branch in the road to consider the fastest way home when I heard someone crying. Not a big cry, but a soft little one. A sniffling, like from a kid even smaller than I was. I knew I should have kept running, like my mom told me to, but it just made me too sad. I had to check out if they were okay. I caught my breath and looked around, only to see someone on a park bench down the path to my left. They were underneath the only working street light, so I got a good look at them. She was a girl, my age, with these little bantu knots, and a bright blue summer dress. She was curled up on the bench, burying her face in her knees, and while my mom always taught me to be obedient, she also taught me to follow my heart, so I did. I sat down on the bench next to her. She kept sniffling and weeping, but it was so faint, like she'd done it all day. I scooched a bit closer. "Hi," I said. "I'm Leah." She didn't answer. She just turned her back on me. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Why are you crying?" Everyone is bad," she said. "They're bad and I hate them." "Why? What'd they do?" "They put this stupid bracelet on and I can't get it off," she sniffled. "They said it's an ugly girl's bracelet." She held her arm out and it was this strange copper-like bracelet with little squares linked with iron rings. There were these white silhouettes of people etched into every other square with splotches of an iron red color in between. I'd never seen anything like it, and the sides looked really sharp, like sharp enough to cut yourself with. It didn't look safe. "Let me see," I said, taking her hand and scooching even closer. There was no immediate way to take it off, but one of the rings were a bit damaged. I inched it closer to my mouth, gnawed on it a bit, and managed to make a dent. With that, I pulled it apart. I did get a small cut on my lip though. The sides were really sharp. As the bracelet came off, the sniffles stopped. The girl turned to me. "Thanks, Leah," she said. "I've waited all day for someone to help me." And as she turned around, she smiled at me. Her eyes weren't red from crying. Her nose wasn't wet with snot. She looked perfectly normal, and she had my face. I just looked at her for a moment. She waved at me, now bracelet free, and skipped away into the night, giggling with excitement. The bracelet, still in my hand, crumbled into rust. The light above, the only working light on the street, flickered. Something about it just felt wrong. And I got on my feet and I ran as fast as I could. When I got home, my dad was waiting by the door. I shut the door behind me, kicked off my shoes, and ran headfirst into him, crying my eyes out. I hadn't even noticed that I had this weird shiver. Maybe it was just adrenaline running off. I hugged his sweater and cried. cried. After a few seconds, I noticed he wasn't moving. No pats on the back, no comforting words, no cute nicknames or kisses on the cheek. I stepped back and looked up at him. He was holding his hands out like he was ready to defend himself. His eyes had gone wide and his mouth hung open like a fish out of water. He never looked at me like that before. Never. Dad? He fell backwards and knocked over a lamp. He crawled away from me, desperate to put distance between us. Jada, he called out. Jada! I couldn't stop crying. I was scared and I didn't understand. He looked at me like I was a wild animal, when all I wanted was my dad. He hurried into the backyard, calling out to my mother over and over. He had this high-pitched note that I hadn't heard before, like he'd been hurt. I just sat down on the floor, buried my face between my knees, and cried. My tears felt strange on the skin of my knees. I sat there for a couple of minutes until I heard a door open. I didn't look up. I was scared to see my dad like that again. Leah, sweetie? It was my mom. Honey, are you there? I got back on my feet. It was my mom. On the other side of the room. She'd blindfolded herself with a towel from the bathroom. I'm here, Mom. Leah, honey, can you come here? I walked up to her, but when I was about 6 feet away, she held up a hand urging me to stop. Slowly, honey, she said. Come here. She held out her hands. Looking back at it, I think she wanted to be sure I didn't try to take off her blindfold. We held hands, and she tried her best to smile. Did you go by the lake? She asked. I need you to be honest with me. I didn't want to be late. You'd be mad. So you went by the lake, right? I took a deep breath and slumped my shoulders. My mom held my hands in a tight grip. Yeah, I admitted. I'm sorry. My mom swallowed. I could hear her struggling to keep her breath steady. She was right there, on the edge of panic. We're gonna fix this, honey, she said. We're gonna fix this. She made her way back to the kitchen and pulled out a paper bag. She told me we were playing a game and that I would get a prize if I kept the bag on. I was allowed to make holes for the eyes if I kept sunglasses on underneath, but I couldn't take it off. If I did, I had to warn them first. All the while, I could see my dad in the backyard, retching his guts up. You gotta keep the bag on, honey, Mom said. You gotta promise. I promised. That night, my dad could barely look at me. All he could give me was quick glances, and I could tell it was painful for him. He wanted to hug me, to care for me, but he was too scared. I'd never seen my dad scared of anything, and having him scared of me was heartbreaking. I could see the conflict in him. At least now he was back to calling me his little Leah. It was a start. My mom made me a sandwich and chocolate milk, but I had to eat it in my room. As soon as I was done, I had to put the bag back on. That first night, I sat by the edge of my bed and ate my sandwich in silence. The crust was off, like always. My mom was waiting just outside the door, but she couldn't come in as long as my paper bag was off. I didn't understand. How could I? Mom, I said, what's happening? Something bad happened, honey, she said, but we're gonna fix it. You're gonna be okay. I feel okay, Mom. I know you do, honey. You're doing great. You just have to be patient. Can Imani come over tomorrow? I'm sorry, no. She can't come over until you're better. But we're gonna listen to CDs. I'm sorry, honey. When I finished and put my bag back on, my mom came to my room and left a glass of water, toothpaste, and a toothbrush. I couldn't brush my teeth in the bathroom for some reason. Bag off, brushing, bag on again. Mom said goodnight through the door. I could hear her sobbing as she went back downstairs. I couldn't sleep that night. I twisted and turned for hours on end, but my post just wouldn't go down. Finally, I decided to use the bathroom, stretch my legs for a bit. Only then did I realize they'd blocked my door. Standing there, turning the knob over and over, I realized I was stuck. I could hear my parents arguing downstairs through the door, snippets of a longer, angrier conversation. I'm gonna call them, Dad said. First thing in the morning, we're calling them. You think they'll help us? You think they'll just do that out of goodness of their hearts? What are we gonna do then? Have you forgotten what it cost us last time? What are we gonna do then? Have you forgotten what we paid? I haven't forgotten a goddamn thing. But what are we gonna do then? We're dealing with this. You and me, we're dealing with this. There was a quiet that hung in the air. Something that Mom had said sounded bad, like dealing with this was a bad thing. We're gonna need a gun. I woke up early the next morning, still leaning against the door. When my mom finally let me out, she had a few rules for me to follow until everything got sorted out. I was to stay inside. Above everything, I couldn't go outside. This was for my own protection, apparently. Secondly, I was to not look at my own reflection, not through puddles, a reflection in the windows, the bathroom mirror, anything. No looking at myself. Third, I could not touch my own face without gloves. The gloves I was given turned out to be oven mitts. And finally, if I ever took off the paper bag or whatever they chose to conceal me with, I had to tell them about it in advance. That first day was the worst. I kept getting this awful claustrophobic feeling, like I was stuck in that damn bag. I had trouble breathing and I felt trapped. Once, I took it off without warning my mom, but she managed to shield her eyes before it was too late. When I put the bag back on, I could tell she was furious. For a moment, I thought she was going to hit me. She never looked at me like that before. Please, you can't just take it off, she said. Never do that again. Never. Dad just wasn't around. He was out all day and only came back to fetch something from the garage. He and Mom talked for a bit on the driveway, then he was off again. He looked like he'd been crying. All the while, I was walking around with my face concealed and oven mitts covering my hands. Mom had taken down all of the mirrors, and Dad had covered the windows with brown packing tape. While I wasn't allowed to go anywhere, my mom still tried her best to keep me calm. She made me popcorn and allowed me to talk to Imani on the phone, as long as I didn't say anything about being sick. We didn't talk for long. I ended up listening to my new Destiny's Child CD on my own. That memory of sitting on the floor of my childhood room, wearing that bag and a pair of oven mitts, is burned into my mind. While Mom was busy, I remembered my jewelry box. It had mostly plastic rings and clip-on earrings, but it had a built-in mirror on the inside of the lid. If I wanted to, I could see what the fuss was about. I dug it out and called out to my mom that I was taking off the bag in my room for a while. That way, I'd at least get a warning knock before she entered. So I sat there, box in hand. I took off my oven mitts and opened it. As soon as the lock clicked, I got this chill up my spine, like dipping your toes in cold water. Knowing you're about to wade out into the deep, I knew what I was doing was wrong, but it wasn't just wrong because Mom said so, but because I was doing something I shouldn't be able to do. I was breaking more than just rules. Still, I opened the box, slowly. As soon as I saw the edge of my reflection, I heard something, a laugh in the distance, like a looming thunderstorm, a bright and joyous shriek. I slammed the box shut, and the laugh was reduced to a giggle, then nothing. My hands were so warm that I could feel my fingers sweating. I could have sworn the box was hurting me. Still, I had to try again. I had to know. I clicked the lid open again and heard a plastic crackle. It wasn't coming from the box, but something in my room. Looking around, I didn't see anything obvious. I could hear my heart beating through my chest. Then I looked up. To be continued.